I hadn't seen my dad in 3 years before he died. Not because we fought, not because we hated each other. Just life, work, distance. The kind of slow drifting apart that feels like nothing at the time, until suddenly you're standing in an airport with your carry-on bag and a voicemail from your mom that just says, "He's gone." I was supposed to be there. That's the worst part. I booked the flight the second I heard about the stroke. I left work midweek, packed in 20 minutes, and was halfway to the airport before I realized I forgot a suit. It didn't matter. I just wanted to be there. I wanted to say goodbye, even if he wasn't conscious. But fate, or bad planning, or just sheer awful luck, had other ideas. My layover in Chicago turned into a 12-hour nightmare. Thunderstorms, maintenance issues, gate changes. I spent half the night curled up near a charging station listening to crying toddlers and muffled announcements. I kept checking my phone, texting my mom. Nothing. By the time I landed in upstate New York, it was already too late. The funeral had started an hour earlier, and I was still 45 minutes from town. I changed in the airport bathroom, rented the cheapest car I could find, drove like a maniac through winding roads and rain-slicked highways. And when I got to the church, the parking lot was already empty. Just me, and the janitor locking the side doors. I didn't go home right away. I just sat there in the rental, engine ticking, still dressed in a wrinkled white shirt and a black tie that looked more like a shoelace. My phone buzzed. Missed calls, a voicemail from my sister Anna. I didn't listen. I knew what it would say. Where were you? What could I possibly answer? I tried, because I did. I really did, but I tried doesn't matter when. The coffin's already in the ground. I finally showed up at my childhood home around 8 p.m. The lights were on. The driveway was packed. My mom was standing on the porch in her navy cardigan, the one she always wore to funerals and graduations, holding a cup of tea and looking like she'd aged 10 years in 2 days. She didn't say anything when I walked up, just hugged me. Tight. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I know," she said. "It's not your fault." But I could feel it. In her shoulders. In the way she looked past me instead of at me. I wasn't there. And everyone noticed. Inside, it was all casseroles and uncomfortable laughter. My cousins, who I hadn't seen in forever, hugged me like I just returned from war. My uncle made a joke about missing the drama. Someone handed me a plate of cold macaroni and cheese I didn't ask for. I took it anyway. Anna barely looked at me. She was sitting in the corner with her husband, wearing a black dress and that smug, superior look she always got when she thought she was the good kid. I used to joke that she was born with a gold star pinned to her diaper. She never found that funny. "You made it," she said flatly when I approached. "I tried," I said again, and hated how weak it sounded. She raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, well, he noticed." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," she said. "Just, he waited, you know?" And then she walked away. That night, I slept in my old room. Same. Posters on the wall. Same creaky bed. But the bookshelf was empty now, and the drawers had been cleared out. Mom said they were making space. For what? She didn't say. I stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking about the last time I saw him. 3 years ago, Thanksgiving, we'd argued about politics. He made a crack about my career. I rolled my eyes. It wasn't a big fight, just another small fracture in a long line of them. But we never called each other after that. Life got busy. He got older. I got more stubborn. And now he was gone. The next morning, we sat around the breakfast table in a weird fog of silence and eggs. Anna was talking about the eulogy she gave. Apparently, it was beautiful. Everyone cried. Mom smiled and nodded and touched her hand like Anna had just won an Oscar. I sipped my coffee and stared at my plate. Then the lawyer arrived. It wasn't some big reading of the will moment, like in the movies. No mahogany table or dramatic pauses. Just a man with a briefcase and a bunch of papers. He talked for a while. Legal stuff. My mom looked exhausted, and then he said it. To Anna, your father leaves the house and remaining savings. I blinked. And to Michael, he paused, looked at his papers, then cleared his throat. There are no items or property listed in your name. For a second, I thought he was joking. I laughed, a short, confused sound, but no one else did. Wait. What? Anna didn't even flinch, just crossed her arms like she'd expected it. I don't understand, I said, looking around the room. There has to be a mistake. The lawyer gave me a sad smile. I'm sorry. And then, just like that, it was over. My dad had cut me out of the will. I didn't say anything at first, not when the lawyer apologized again. Not when Anna thanked him for his time, like she hadn't just watched her only brother get cut out of his own father's will. Not when my mom put her hand over mine and whispered, "We'll talk later." I just stood up, walked out onto the porch, and sat down. It was cold, the kind of cold that crawls through your clothes and into your spine. But I didn't feel it. All I could hear was that one sentence, over and over. There are no items or property listed in your name. Like I didn't exist, like I hadn't been his son for 33 years. An hour passed, maybe 2. My coffee went cold in my hands. I heard people leaving through the front door, their muffled goodbyes, the rustle of coats. But I stayed where I was. Eventually, my mom came out and sat next to me. He wrote the will last year, she said quietly, after the hospital scare. And he didn't tell me. She hesitated. He said he would. I told him he should. I looked at her. Why didn't you? Her eyes welled up. Because I didn't think he'd actually go through with it. We sat in silence. Then she added, "He was hurt, Mike. You didn't come around. You didn't call." "I was working. I live across the country. You know that." "I know," she said. "But he didn't want excuses. He wanted his son." I stared at the gravel driveway. So he left me nothing. He didn't mean it as punishment. Then what did he mean it as? She didn't have an answer for that. Or if she did, she couldn't say it. That night, I tried to sleep again, in that same childhood bed. But this time, it felt smaller, tighter. Like the air itself was pressing down on me. Every sound in the house echoed. The floorboards creaked. The pipes groaned. The silence between each noise felt deafening. I thought about all the things he used to say to me when I was little. The backyard catch games, the awkward talks about girls, the way he used to ruffle my hair when he was proud, or didn't know how to say it out loud. And now I had nothing. No keepsake. No letter, no acknowledgement, just a cold bedroom and a quiet house. I left the next morning before anyone else woke up. No note, no goodbye. I didn't trust myself to speak without exploding. I drove straight to the airport, turned in the rental, and booked the first flight home. Window seat, headphones on, hood up. Like a kid hiding from the world. On the flight, I kept thinking about one thing. If I had been on time, if I had made it to the funeral, would it have changed anything? Would seeing me in the front row, head bowed, have softened whatever bitterness he felt in the end? Or did he make his decision long before that? Maybe it was already written, sealed, final. Back in LA, I returned to my apartment and dropped my bag on the floor. I didn't unpack. I didn't go into work. I just sat on the couch, lights off, scrolling through old voicemails, trying to find one from him. Something I could keep. Something that said he still cared. I found one. From 2 years ago. "Hey, just calling to check in. Haven't heard from you in a while. Hope you're doing okay. Your mom says you're busy. Just don't forget to call your old man sometimes. That's all." I listened to it 3 times. Then I saved it to 3 different devices. The weeks that followed were strange. I tried to go back to work, but I couldn't focus. I tried talking to friends about it, but no one really understood. He left it all. To your sister? They'd ask, baffled. That's brutal. And it was. Not because I wanted the house, or the money, or any of the stuff, but because it felt like a final judgment. Like he'd looked at my life, at everything I had become, and decided I didn't deserve to be remembered. I didn't even get a watch, or a tie, or a book with his name in the margins. Just nothing. Anna called me about a month later. I ignored the first few calls, then I picked up. You okay? She asked, voice unusually soft. Sure, I lied. There was a pause. Then she said, I'm selling the house. What? I don't want it. Too many memories, and the upkeep is insane. You want anything from it before I list it? I wanted to scream, to ask her how she could be so cold. But instead I just said, no, keep it all. You sure? Yeah, I said. It was never mine anyway. She didn't argue. A few weeks later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten on the top. Inside was a single item, my dad's old leather-bound journal. The one he used to keep on the shelf next to his recliner. Full of random thoughts, half-finished to-do lists, notes about yard work, and clipped-out newspaper quotes he liked. Taped to the inside cover was a sticky note. In my sister's handwriting, he read this every night. Figured it should go to you. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened the first page. The first few pages of the journal were just what I expected. Notes about the garden, a reminder to fix the gutters. Grocery lists that included things like turkey bacon and Anna's tea. Doodles in the margins. My dad was never an artist, but he used to draw these weird little cartoon faces when he was bored. Eyebrows too big, mouths too small. They looked like confused potatoes. I smiled at those. Then I turned the page and saw my name. Mike called today. The entry was dated 3 years ago, Thanksgiving week, right before everything went cold between us. It was a short call. He sounded tired. I know he's busy. Just wish he'd come home more. Feels like I'm losing him 1 hour at a time. There was more like that. Scattered thoughts, not always in order. But the message was clear. He missed me. He didn't say it out loud. Not in person, not on the phone. But here, in this beat-up journal, were the words I never got to hear. And yet, he still didn't include me in the will. That contradiction ate at me. I flipped through every page, hoping there was some final entry. A letter. A paragraph that said, I'm sorry, or this is why I did it. But there wasn't. Just fragments. Some about me. Most not. A whole life captured in ballpoint ink. At the very back, on the inside cover, was a taped photo. One I didn't remember being taken. It was me and him in the backyard. I must have been 9 or 10. We were building something, probably the doomed treehouse that fell apart after 2 months. And I was holding a hammer, grinning like I knew what I was doing. He had his hand on my shoulder. We both looked happy. Genuinely happy. That photo broke me. I cried for the first time since the funeral. Not quiet tears. Full-on sobbing. The kind of tears that rack your chest and make you choke on your own breath. I didn't even realize I was still clutching the journal until I noticed my knuckles were white. I think that was the moment I stopped trying to make sense of it all. My dad wasn't perfect. I wasn't either. We drifted. We miscommunicated. We both let pride win too many times, and when it came time to put everything in writing, he made a decision I couldn't understand, and probably never would. But I also had this journal, his thoughts, his voice, his picture of me with that dumb hammer and lopsided smile. Maybe that was more personal than a share of the savings account. Still, I didn't forgive him. Not entirely. There's this idea people have that once someone dies, everything they did should be wrapped in grace. They meant well. They didn't know better. They were from a different time. But grief doesn't work that way. I could love my dad and still be angry. I could miss him and still resent what he left behind. That was the balance I had to find. Anna texted me a few days later. She'd found a buyer for the house. A couple, from Boston, with 2 kids and a golden retriever. The sale was moving fast. She offered, again, to let me take anything I wanted before the closing. I didn't reply right away. But that night, I sat down and made a list. Not of what I wanted, but of what I remembered. The old fishing rod in the garage. The cracked coffee mug that said, "1-1 Dad" in faded blue print. The metal lunchbox he used to take to work before he retired. Stupid little things, but they were pieces of him. I sent the list. Anna didn't argue. Said she'd pack them up and ship them. A week later, another box arrived. Inside were most of the items I'd asked for. The mug, the lunchbox, the fishing rod, barely wrapped in bubble wrap, but still intact, and tucked at the very bottom. Something I hadn't expected. A stack of old letters. Mostly unmailed, some with stamps, all addressed to me. They were dated over the past 10 years. Some were short, 1 or 2 lines. Others went on for pages. He talked about politics, baseball, the neighbors who kept putting up ugly decorations at Christmas. He complained about the dog next door. He wondered if I was eating enough, and one letter, somewhere in the middle of the stack, simply said, "I know I wasn't the easiest father, but I tried, and I hope, in your own way, you're trying too." It wasn't an apology, but it was close enough. The letters stayed on my kitchen table for days. I didn't have the heart to put them away. I'd reread 1 or 2 each morning with my coffee, like some sort of ritual. Some made me laugh. A few made me wince. Most made me miss him in a way I couldn't quite describe. Not with words, anyway. He never sent them. Maybe he was embarrassed, or thought they were silly. Maybe he just didn't know how to start a conversation with a grown son who had drifted so far away. But still, he wrote them. That mattered more than I expected. 3 months after the funeral, I finally visited his grave. Alone. Early in the morning. The cemetery was quiet. A few crows called out from a distance. The grass was damp with dew, and the sun was still low enough to cast those long, dramatic shadows across the headstones. I stood there for a long time. Didn't bring flowers. Didn't say much. Just stood there with my hands in my pockets, reading the simple inscription, "Thomas L. Carter, loving husband. Proud father." 1958-2024. Remember thinking, I wish I knew what version of proud he meant. Was he proud of me? Or just of Anna? Or maybe just proud in general, like a man who didn't know how else to describe himself in a few etched words. I pulled the old coffee mug from my jacket, the Yacht Dad one. I placed it gently beside the headstone. It didn't feel like closure, but it felt like something. Back in LA, life picked up again. Work deadlines, grocery lists, dry cleaning. I'd forgotten to pick up for 2 weeks, the usual, but something in me had shifted. I started calling my mom more. Checking in, not just when it was convenient, but when it mattered. I even flew out for her birthday, something I hadn't done in years. Anna and I weren't exactly close, but we talked more than we used to. She'd send me pictures of old family albums she found while unpacking her new place. We'd laugh. Or about Dad's ridiculous outfits in the 90s, or the time he tried to fix the dishwasher with duct tape, and positive thinking. It was strange, this new version of family. A little fractured. A little fragile, but real. One evening, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, journal in my lap, flipping back through my dad's handwriting. There, wedged between grocery notes and reminders to clean the gutters, I found an entry I'd missed. Before. Dated just after my last visit home. 2 years ago. Mike was here this weekend. Didn't talk much, but he smiled when I brought up the Yankees. That's something. It was so ordinary, so small, but it meant the world to me. We spend so much time expecting the big gestures, the dramatic speeches, the emotional confrontations, the apologies that fix everything in one perfect sentence. But sometimes, what you get instead is a weathered notebook, a photo taped to the back cover, a dozen unsent letters, a memory of your dad watching the game, scribbling thoughts he never had the courage to speak. It's not enough, but maybe it's what he had to give. And sometimes, that has to be enough.